What's good everyone, Shurit here, bringing you the long-awaited, the demanded dual terminal story involving the Necros, the Tellarknights, the Qliphorts, the Infernoids, and who wouldn't forget, the sadistic god, Tiara, source of destruction. So please share this video with all your friends, with everybody you know, because this has been a story demanded by the community for such a long time. So without further ado, let's get into the video, guys. All life rooted on that planet has its origins in the notorious sacred tree. The energy radiating from the sacred tree spreads throughout the earth and is granting new life as it takes the form of any and all newborn creatures who draw breath upon the land. When these creatures die, this energy goes through the earth back into the tree. This is the system of reincarnation, regulating the flow of life and death in the world. Essentially, the sacred tree is a combination of two different types of reincarnation systems, known as Sephiroth and Qliphorts. The executives of these systems were Sophia, goddess of rebirth, and Tiara, source of destruction. Sophia regulated the power of creation, while Tiara regulated the power of destruction. However, in the battle of gods in times immemorial, Sophia managed to overcome Tiara, obtaining a sole directive over the sacred tree's system. Using the power of creation and destruction, the victorious Sophia accessed the sacred tree, creating a core to seal Tiara within the sacred tree. To make sure that the core could never be used again, Sophia broke it into 10 pieces and scattered them within the organisms in a land far from the sacred tree. Those pieces later became the pyroxene of the Gemnites. With Tiara's seal, the only way for organisms on the surface to prosper was through Sophia. Even so, Tiara had no thoughts of giving up, trying to seize control of the world. After spending unmeasurable eons interfering with the life energy being recycled back into the Sephiroth and turning it into life energy for the Qliphorts, Tiara slowly regained some of its power. Seizing the chance as Sophia fell in battle against the surface life forms, Tiara began planning its advent on the surface world once more. The first step would be reactivating the Qliphorts, while the second step would be regaining the 10 cores to remove the seal suppressing its powers. The final part of the plan would have Tiara obtain the powers of creation and destruction and complete its revival, and so this former deity began to put its dark machinations into motion. Constella Somber and Evil Zone Kirkion, who had obtained the power of Sophia from the previous Great War, noticed that their powers of creation and destruction seemed to have been interfered with by an outside source. Thinking that this might be a sign of Sophia's revival, in the process of searching for the truth behind this development, they descended upon the notorious sacred tree, where, for the first time in decades, they met up with their friends from the past. Notoria Leodrake and Steelsworm Roach, as well as Ritual Beast and the Necros who had protected this land since the previous war, had all noticed the same strange disturbance and gathered once more as comrades in arms. Firmly believing that the disturbance was related to the sacred tree, Somber and Kirkion gave up parts of their power of creation and destruction to each of Leodrake and Roach, powering them up to protect the tree and prevent further threats. Notoria Leodrake was converted into Leo Keeper of the sacred tree, while Steelsworm Roach was created into Evil's Worm Exciton Knight. Parting with Kirkion and the others at the sacred tree, Somber scoured the land in search of powerful ley lines where life energy overflow in order to awaken the power needed to protect the planet from a new threat. Using her power of creation, Somber used the 7 pyroxene passed down from Gemnite Master Diamond and the 8th pyroxene from her previous incarnation Gemnite Seraphionite to create 8 Yangzings. Somber's true goal was to break the seal on the notorious sacred tree and gain access to the Sephiroth system by using the life energy of Sophia, goddess of rebirth, cursing through the land to materialize the Yangzings. The Sephiroth, being the life system of Sophia itself, would allow Somber to prevent Sophia's revival should she gain control of it, but in order to do so, Somber required a total of 9 Yangzing materializations. So after giving birth to 8 Yangzings, Somber resumed her travels around the world, searching for a new ley line suitable to materialize into the 9th and final Yangzing. The Yangzings materialized by Somber were Swanee, Bian, Bixi, Pulau, Chaofang, Tuauti, Zefraxi and Zefranui. Awakening the Shaddolls. Meanwhile, Evazorm Kirkion heard a rumour that the hero of the last Great War, Gemnite Master Diamond, had revived, but had also attacked several individuals. He headed towards the Mist Valley Great Marshlands to find out the truth, but what he witnessed was that his former comrade, nearly unrecognisable, in the form of Ken Agora, an anti-luminescent knight. Kanagoran wielded the horrifying power of absorbing souls from the living, leaving their bodies as empty shells. Hoping to end the situation before any more victims were created, Kirkion bravely fought on alone. However, he was unable to bring himself to use his full power against a former comrade and friend, and was ultimately absorbed by Kanagoran. Kirkion's power of destruction strengthened Kanagoran tremendously, mutating it into Shaddoll Core. Shaddoll Core then gave birth to those who lost their lives in the previous war, the Shaddolls. The true form of the Shaddoll are those who have lost their lives and were supposed to return to the sacred tree to be reborn again through Sophia's life energy. However, they were trapped by Tiara while inside the sacred tree and imprisoned inside the vacuum tubes of the Infernoids. Over time, their life energy began to change from those of Sophia's to those of Tiara's, which caused the sacred tree's system to treat them as bugs, spawning them to the world with only their bodies. In this form, they barely have a consciousness, but instead hold an innate desire to return to the sacred tree so that they can be reborn correctly. And so, the Shaddoll army began their advance in the direction of the tree. Sensing Kirkion's plight with her power of creation, Somber led the Yangzings to the Mist Valley Great Marshlands to stop the Shaddoll's assault. However, the Yangzings fought valiantly. Suwani, Fire of the Yangzing, and Pulau, Wind of the Yangzing, both had their shadows stolen and were turned into Shaddolls. Suwani, Fire of the Yangzing, was turned into Shaddoll Dragon, with Pulau, Wind of the Yangzing, being turned into El Shaddoll Winder. The remaining Yangzing stood their ground, but were quickly driven into a corner by the Shaddolls. In the hour of Yangzing's danger, Chiwin, Light of the Yangzing, a new Yangzing, came falling out of the sky. Chiwin was materialized by Somber after she gathered up all the star energy still drifting in the heavens, and such, it has a different origin than the other Yangzing. Due to this, Chiwin holds the power of connecting the stars, the very same power wielded by the Constellar during the previous war. By unleashing this power, it gathered up and combined with all the Yangzing, including those who have already been turned into Shaddolls, evolving into Baxia, Brightness of the Yangzing. As if in a resonance with the birth of the great divine dragon Baxia, Brightness of the Yangzing, by Chiwin, Light of the Yangzing's power, warriors of light descended from the brilliant stars in the sky. They are the descendants of the Constellar, the brigade of saviors that fought to save this planet in the previous Great War. Constellar Somber, being herself the result of the fusion of 12 Constellar heroes, released the power of the 12 constellations, the 12 constellation rings, from herself and returned them to the new warriors, the warriors of light. Upon regaining that power, turned them into Tellarings and transformed themselves into Tellarknights. The battle between the Tellarknight and the Yangzing alliance against the Shaddoll were fierce, and in the midst of the turmoil, all 8 Yangzing were turned into Shaddoll. In the midst of this, Tellarknight Anunkuli, who wielded the power of the great constellation Serpens, suddenly sensed that there was a sliver of power within the shadows captured by the Shaddoll, and was similar to its own. That was none other than the power of the constellation Ophiuchus, wielded by Evil's one Kirkion, who was absorbed by Shaddoll Core. Anunkuli tried to free Kirkion, but in the overwhelming power of the Shaddoll, he ended up getting restrained instead. Sensing Anunkuli's preparedness to die just to free him from deep within the shadow, Kirkion also tried to fight back. However, with his power of destruction, suppressed by Shaddoll Core, the struggle was to no avail, and Anunkuli was captured by the shadow and turned into Shaddoll Squamata. At that moment, Kirkion used the shadow of his staff from the shadows, entrusting it to the Tellarknights, still fighting outside. Wielding the staff's power, Tellarknight Deneb amplifies the power of connecting the stars that the Tellarknights possessed and evolved into Tellarknight Deltaros, together with Tellarknight Altair and Tellarknight Vega. Following the Stellanova Alpha, Deltaros called Tellarknights down from the sky. The greatest error the Tellarknights made was allowing the Shaddolls to obtain the power of connecting the stars themselves by absorbing Tellarknight Anunkuli. The Shaddoll army used that power to fuse Shaddoll Squamata and Bixi, Water of the Yangzing, which had been turned into a Shaddoll, into Jiaotu, Darkness of the Yangzing, a dark Yangzing with the power of connecting the stars. They then further fused Jiaotu with the Shaddollified Tautu, Shadow of the Yangzing, changing them into Yazi, Evil of the Yangzing. At this point, the war, which started with the Tellarknight Yangzing alliance against the Shaddoll, had become one of the Tellarknights facing both the Yangzings and the Shaddolls, with no way out in sight. After obtaining the power of connecting the stars, the Shaddolls gathered up the 8 pyroxenes inside of the 8 Yangzings, and the pyroxene belonging to Gemnite Lapis, resting inside El Shaddoll construct, to the anti-luminescent stone, belonging to Kernagoran, inside Shaddoll core. Obtaining the power of the 10 cores, Shaddoll core evolved into El Shaddoll Greister. Following the will of the scheming Tiara source of destruction to revive itself, Greister began attacking the notorious sacred tree. Although the situation was starting to improve for the Tellarknights, with Deltarus at front and centre, the attack of the Shaddolls, which leave every life form around them turned into more Shaddolls, proved to be a desperate battle. In the end, Sirius was also turned into a Shaddoll. To prevent Sirius's body from being used like how an Unculi was used for Shaddoll Squamata, Betelgeuse used his Tellering to amplify his power of connecting the stars, and fused the two of them plus Procyon together to form Stellarknight Triver. Even with the power of 2 Tellarknights in Deltarus and Triver, there were no match for El Shaddoll Construct and El Shaddoll Greister, and were forced to retreat from the Mist Valley Great Marshlands. Retreating to the notorious sacred tree, the Tellarknights were met with those who had gathered to protect the tree. Borrowing the powers of Evil's One Exciton Knight and Leo, keeper of the sacred tree, Ritual Beast and Necros, they set up a barrier around the sacred tree as a final line of defence. The Tellarknight, Ritual Beast, Necros alliance and the Shaddoll finally clashed at the barrier of the sacred tree. The allied forces fought valiantly as both individuals and as a unit, successfully impeding the advance of the Shaddoll forces. With the resistance of the allied forces, Tiara was unable to breach the barrier and began a new plan. It sought to capture one with great spiritual power and turn that person into a Shaddoll, and so Ritual Beast Tamer Wen was targeted by the Shaddoll and turned into El Shaddoll Windigo. Ritual Beast Tamer Wen was born with great spiritual power, but this caused fear in those around her, and she was eventually abandoned by her parents. She was picked up by Elder of the Ritual Beast Tamers and raised like sisters with Pelicia, descendant of Gusto. She usually has her eyes closed in order to suppress her great spiritual powers, which she greatly detests. El Shaddoll Winda was Winda, priestess of Gusto in life. She died when her body was assaulted by Sophia, goddess of rebirth's divine aura, during its revival due to the proximity of the event. A very crucial part to Tiara's revival is that Sophia's power, which was needed to gain access to the sacred tree, so to compensate for this, Tiara purposely revived her. Underground, hidden beneath the sacred tree, lies the Qliphort and the Qliphoth system, which seals Tiara. With Winda's contact, the seal had been broken, and the sacred tree ripped itself from the ground, floating in the sky. In the face of such an overwhelming event, even with the Tellarknights and those who gathered at the sacred tree present, nothing could be done to stop it. At the same time, a change was also happening at the remains of the supposedly defeated Greister. The 10 cores emerged from within Greister and were absorbed by the sacred tree. The 10 cores absorbed by the Qliphoth system turned into energy source cores, finally booting up the Qliphort. The activated Qliphort did not even spare a passing glance at the lives on the surface, but rather tenaciously went after the Shaddoll to eliminate or restrain them. The Qliphort were originally entities that maintained the balance of the sacred tree's Qliphoth life system, and to them, the Shaddoll, which were born from the Sephiroth system, but who now had their souls in the Qliphoth system, while still maintaining their bodies from the Sephiroth system to move about, are nothing but alien elements that must be eliminated, as they are the life that should not be, and an existence that cannot be tolerated. Although the Qliphort are powerful, the power of El Shaddoll Construct was still too great, and so they combined their effort with the surface life forms. Evil's Worm Kirkion fought to suppress the Shaddoll from within, while Deltarus gathered the staff and power it obtained from Kirkion at Qliphort Towers, and with this double suppression from the inside and the outside, Construct was finally stopped. However, the threat was still far from over, and fearing the restraints breaking, the allied forces, with advice from Kirkion, urged Shurit, strategist of the Necros, to use the spiritual power of the 3 ice barrier dragons within himself to create a seal, freezing El Shaddoll's Shekinah in place and completely incapacitating it. To summarise, obviously, Evil's Own Kirkion gathered energy together with Satellite Deltarus at Qliphort Towers, restraining El Shaddoll Construct, turning it into El Shaddoll's Shekinah, which was then froze by the power of the 3 ice barrier dragons. The Shaddolls, now little more than an aimless mob, were being systematically eliminated by the Qliphort. However, as Qliphort Scout restrained and absorbed Winder, the situation was turned completely on its head. After absorbing a being with the same aura as a god, that administrative privilege allowed access to Tiara's power, which was split up and sealed inside of the Qliphort. Qliphort Scout's flavor text clearly shows this. Booting in replica mode. An error has occurred when executing. Sophia, Zephyra, unknown publisher, allow Tiara, Qliphort. Booting in autonomy mode. Under Tiara's control, Winder released the seal and revive the Infernoids, the vanguards of gods. Finally released from their seals after immeasurable amounts of time, the Infernoids acquired the vacuum tubes, which the Qliphort used to capture the Shaddoll inside themselves to regain the power they have lost. To sweep away the Qliphort and the surface life forms interfering with Tiara's revival, the Infernoids began to flood the entire world with the flames of void. Meanwhile, after coming into contact with El Shaddoll Winder, the Qliphorts came to realize the existence of a life with the same aura as a god as an impossibility. Registering this as a fatal error in Notorious Sacred Tree's life system, the Qliphorts started executing the elimination of all life on the surface world to purge and purify the world. To take on not only the Infernoid but also the Qliphort was an undertaking, and remaining allied forces were ill prepared for it. To remedy this, Dance Princess of the Necros tried combining the necromancy of the Necros Mirror and the cycle of the Gishki Aqua Mirror together to revive the souls lost to the Shaddoll. With that power, the successfully revived Gemknight Master Diamond emerged from the remains of El Shaddoll Greister. To atone for his sins committed as a Shaddoll, Master Diamond threw himself into the war. After rendezvousing with the Tellarknight, Gemknight Master Diamond tried to perform the ultimate fusion by weaving together his own power of fusion, the valiant form of Constella in his memories, and the power of connecting the stars wielded by the Tellarknights. Combining the four chosen Tellarknights, Sirius, Procyon, Capella and Rigel, and the two Tellarrings housing the souls of Constella Aldebaran and Constella Pollux with himself, Gemknight Master Diamond transformed into the legendary divine dragon Satellarknight Constella Diamond, and with his new form, Diamond appeared at battle against the Infernoid and Qliphort. Rallying around Satellarknight Constella Diamond, the allied forces regained their strength and succeeded in pushing back the waves of Qliphort and Infernoid. Advancing through the remains of the Infernoid and Qliphort, the allied forces finally came face to face with Infernoid and Unku. However, the allied forces struggled in the face of overwhelming power of an Unku, and even their last ray of hope, Constella Diamond, looked to be no match, appearing on the verge of falling to the void flames of an Unku. At his most dire moment, help arrived for Satellarknight Constella Diamond in the form of a ray of light. Constella Somber succeeded in materializing the ninth and final Yangzing, Denlong, origin of the Yangzing, and returned to the battlefield. Using the rest of what little remained of her power of creation after materializing Denlong, Somber fused with Constella Diamond and all the remaining Tellarknights. What was created was the true planetary savior knight, Tellarknight Ptolemaeus. With the birth of Tellarknight Ptolemaeus, the allied forces finally defeated Infernoid and Unku. As the allied forces celebrated over their victory, Shurit, strategist of the Necros, noticed that the power of the three ice barrier dragons within him had disappeared. Sensing that this meant that the war was not yet over, the allied forces began searching for the remnants of the Infernoid and the Qliphorts. However, they discovered that the vacuum tubes of the fallen Infernoids had disappeared from their remains, and that the trail had gone cold on Infernoid Deviati. While escaping the chase of the allied forces, Deviati had managed to collect the vacuum tubes of the fallen Infernoids. To gain even greater power, it managed to reach the void where the three ice barrier dragons were previously sealed. Void Trap Hole. Once there, Deviati managed to absorb the unrivaled power of the three ice barrier dragons, Brionic, Gunge, and Trishula, Dragon of the Ice Barrier, entities said to have nearly destroyed the world in primordial times. Deviati then used the power of the Ice Barrier Dragons to release the seal on the currently frozen but still active El Shaddoll Shekinaga and absorbed it into itself. Realizing Deviati's goal, the allied forces hurried to Shekinaga, but they were too late. El Shaddoll Anoyatilis had been born. Wielding not only the power of Shaddoll, Qliphort and Infernoid, but also the 3 ice barrier dragons, Shaddoll and Noyatilis was strong enough to rival even that of the goddess of rebirth from the past. Channeling the Necros of Sophia, the goddess of rebirth itself, Dance Princess of the Necros set out to stop Noyatilis, together with Telenite Ptolemaeus. The Necros that were left behind used this time to revive the 8 Yangzings, formerly turned it into Shaddolls using their cycle. The 8 revived Yangzings steeled their resolve to stand against the threat of Shaddoll and Noyatilis by using their own sleeping dragon powers. Synchronizing with their resolve, X, a warrior of the Necros, used the spiritual power of the 8 Yangzings as a medium to channel the 8 Dragunity, the dragons of ancient times. The souls of the 8 Dragunity became one and turned into Dragunity Divine Lance, a lance capable of piercing even the gods. The lance was then entrusted to Necros of Sophia, locked in a battle to the death against Noyatilis. With the gathering of Telenite Ptolemaeus, Necros of Sophia, Dragunity Divine Lance and Evil Zumkirkion inside of Shaddoll and Noyatilis in one place, the powers of the goddess rebirth, the powers of creation and destruction, and the 10 cores were assembled. The aura pulsating from this gathering became the key to starting up the Sephiroth system, the counterpart to the Qliphorts system, from within the notorious sacred tree. The holy light emanating from the floating sacred tree chose 10 lives from the surface world to transform into the Zephyr. This Zephyr, just like the Qliphort, is part of the sacred tree system. Its original purpose was as a defense system that purged damaging errors to the sacred tree. But for this war, in order to purge the anomaly threatening to destroy the planet known as Noyatilis, it shared its powers with the surface life forms. And so, the 10 chosen holy warriors stood against Noyatilis, which threatened to destroy both the world and the tree. With the arrival of 10 chosen Zephyr warriors, things finally turned around for the allied forces, which was strained just to stop Shaddoll and Noyatilis in its tracks. With the Dragunity Divine Lance in their hands, Telenite Ptolemaeus and Necros of Sophia used the power of Sagittarius, maintained by Telenite Alsham, to launch the lance. With the power of the 8 dragons infused within, the Divine Lance struck Noyatilis, scattering it into pieces and finally defeating it. Hidden within the remains of Shaddoll and Noyatilis was Infernoid Decatron, the head of Infernoid Deviati, still active and functional. Using the power of the cores within its 10 vacuum tubes, Decatron managed to access the Qliphort system within the sacred tree and revived Tiara, source of destruction. Revived as Infernoid Tiara, it set out to do what Sophia once did, to wipe out all life born from the Sephiroth system. To fully revive into its divine form, Infernoid Tiara still needed the power of creation that once belonged to Sophia. To solve this problem, Tiara planned to revive Gemknight Lapis that had been sleeping inside Shaddoll construct, as she was the mirror image of Telenite Ptolemaeus, including her power of creation, and absorb the power this way. Tiara first forcefully removed the seal suppressing construct, then manipulated the core of the defunct Apocryphal towers and resonated it with the vacuum tubes on Infernoid Decatron, awakening the soul of Gemknight Lapis that had been trapped in a vacuum tube since the previous war. After spending decades in prison within the Infernoid, most of her life energy had been converted into the Qliphort system. Lapis, a shell of her former self, became nothing more than a vanguard of Tiara, otherwise known as Dark Telenite Batlamius. Lapis and Lazuli were twins who were born with their bodies merged together. Although they split up after birth, the pyroxene and its power all went to Lapis, and Lazuli became a special Gemknight without a pyroxene. It is for this reason that Lazuli is the only Gemknight without a pyroxene. Telenite Ptolemaeus was completely bewildered at the form of Dark Telenite Batlamius, essentially her other half. Under Infernoid Tiara's control, Batlamius activated the remains of the 10 Qliphort. Once the activation was complete, Tiara absorbed the 10 Qliphort and Batlamius into itself. With the powers of creation and destruction, as well as the core back in its possession, the ancient god of destruction, Tiara, source of destruction, was fully revived at last. In the face of the god of destruction, with his true powers regained, those on the surface could do nothing but await their purgation. With her final faint sliver of hope, Ptolemaeus released the power of the 9 Yangzings she had once materialized to control the sacred tree at the Sephiroth system. The power activated the hidden 11th Zephyr of the Sephiroth system and refused the cores of the 10 Zephyr. The 11th Zephyr chose Zephyr Core, who possessed auras of both light and darkness, and completed the fusion with its core. The one who stood to face Tiara's source of destruction was the protector of the notorious sacred tree, Sephiroth. The scale of their battle shook the entire planet and lasted for 1,000 days and 1,000 nights. At the dawn of the 1000th day, the forms of Tiara and Sephiroth were nowhere to be seen. The only things left were the charred remains of the sacred tree and 2 gem knights. The war which shook the heavens and the earth had finally come to an end, with the vanquishment of Tiara's source of destruction. Those imprisoned in the vacuum tubes of the Infernoids' remains were freed. Ritual Beast Tamer Elder, upon seeing the return of Gusto Falcon, sobbed uncontrollably, as he did in his youth, as Komai, Hope of Gusto. The other veterans of the previous war, having lived on for decades without ever expecting to see their old friends again in this lifetime, reunited with comrades of their own. From the remains of the Infernoids, previous comrades in arms were set free. Ariel, priestess of the Necros, and spiritual beast Tamer Winder both returned after the end of the war. With the notorious sacred tree out of action, the surface lives had lost their god. While many were at loss about what to do, Crystal saw light emanating from the sacred tree, thought to be completely inactive. With their friends and comrades watching over them, Crystal disappeared into the light along with Lapis. As the dead and as the Shaddoll, they had wandered the world, but they have finally reached their resting place. However, Crystal knows that his past friends and comrades are waiting just beyond that light, the future that they should heed towards. That is a future in which life and death no longer endlessly repeat by the control of the sacred tree. It is a world in which those living on the earth are promised tranquility, freed from the shackles of gods. To seek out that world, to seek out that promised land, he, just as those who were left behind by that light once did, embarks on a journey to an unknown horizon. Bloody hell, guys, thank you guys for watching. That was a long story. I found it interesting. I hope you guys found it interesting. Please share this on any social media platform, on anything you have. I really want other people to see this, because this has been a story demanded in video form by the whole community for years now, ever since the first part of the Duel Terminal came out. So once again, thank you guys for watching. This has been Shurit. Peace.